Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the podcast. Today, I have a very special guest. I have Miss Elli Taylor, or Elli Taylor, whichever you want to call her. Hi, Miss Elli. How are you?
I'm good. Thanks for having me.
So, before we start our question and answer session with Miss Elli, we want to know a little bit about you and about what you do, and maybe you could share some of your hobbies that you've picked up during quarantine.
Well, I am originally from the States. I'm from a small town in Iowa. But for the last 4 years, my husband and I have been living in Indonesia, and we work at SPH. It's an international Christian school here in Jakarta. I teach learning support for the students, but I used to be a PE teacher. So I've had a lot of experience at SPH, and it's been a great joy to get to know a lot of different young individuals. And the hobbies that I picked up during quarantine or stuck with during quarantine, I ran a virtual half marathon, which is super exciting. So that is quarantine because virtual. So obviously there wasn't like a big race, but you could like log your time and whatnot into like a bunch of people who ran it and whatnot. So yeah, I ran a half marathon, which is cool. Other than that, I don't know. Like I'm getting my master's degree right now, so I didn't really have time to do a lot of different things. That kept me pretty busy.
The half marathon thingy, how do you do it virtually?
So basically you sign up for it like you sign up for a regular marathon or half marathon or any race, I suppose. And then usually you would go to like a race site, right? And you would run it with like thousands of people. But virtually, do it on your own time. And so you have to obviously be honest about it. So you go and you just run it, and then you say like, oh, I did it, and then you just log your time online. So it's not near as, I guess, like exciting because you don't like cross the finish line, and there's not like thousands of people there, but it is still an accomplishment. And they like the companies still send you like a medal and a t-shirt and whatnot. So it's basically the same. You just don't have all the people, and you can create your own route. So actually, Mr. Ian, my husband, did it with me. And so we just went out one day in my hometown in Iowa, and we just like ran it just randomly. So it's like kind of fun in its own way because it's super unique. But that is definitely what most of the races nowadays have transitioned to is virtual. So yeah, pretty cool.
That's interesting. I'm like curious how the company kind of run the whole thing, on their headquarters.
Mhm. Yeah. I assume like usually there's like a first place, second place, third place, and so on forth, like winner. I don't think you can really do that with virtual runs because you you could cheat on your time, right? So like sometimes there could be like prizes. So I don't think the same prizes are offered and whatnot, but it's still cool to go out and do it and to say that you did a virtual race, and yeah, it's unique.
Yeah, that's a nice brief introduction. So, again, you told us about how your experience being a PE teacher and being student support teacher.
hmm
So, how does that kind of teach you more about yourself, maybe, like just your job in general?
Yeah, totally. So I think like two very separate areas. For the PE portion, like I really developed a sense of like self-care and the importance of that. Um Not only physically, but also like along with that mentally, right? So that's kind of like the physical aspect of the PE department. But since I've moved on with that and I haven't actually taught PE in 3+ years, and I now am more of the student support. I work with kids, behavior, social, academia, all of the above, and kids ranging from like 4-year-old all the way up to 18-year-olds. So it's a huge challenge, but it has definitely stretched me and has humbled me as a person and as a teacher, and just really allowed me to identify the unique characteristics of each individual, which has helped me identify in myself what I bring to this world as well. So it's really cool to kind of put myself in the students' shoes, and to kind of flip it and be like, hey, my students are unique, and that's what makes them like special and awesome. And, I have those same type of qualities, right? And we're all different, which is also really, really cool. And also being in a leadership role at the school has really, really helped me grow in who I am as a professional, and working with other professionals, and I don't know, like standing up for myself and just being an advocate for what I believe is important at our school. And so in so many different ways have I grown and developed.
Thank you for the insights. That's very detailed and personal. Thank you. So again, like you mentioned that you work with students from a younger age until 18. So that's about like teenagers.
Hmm.
So what do you think are the struggles that kids or adults or teenagers are facing today that you personally have seen in a lot of, the life of your kids, and you've been like, oh wow, like this is something common, like it's not rare.
Sure. So like since quarantine or before quarantine?
Both, maybe?
Okay. So I would say quarantine, I think one of the struggles that I'm seeing like across the board is difficulties amongst families. And how some people who are not well connected to their families, it's been a struggle for them to be in their house surrounded by people they don't get along with. And so that has been an emotional toll and stress for a lot of even my young students, just being with their parents all the time, right? It's a challenge. So then before quarantine, definitely like identity issues, figuring out who they are, even as young kids, like especially as young kids, when you finally start to understand that boys are gross and girls are, if you're a boy, then girls are gross, and figuring out like what it means to be young, and figuring out who you are and how that translates into the high school years and as a young adult, and comparing yourself to others, and all of those cliche like high school things that we like think of but are actually really real, right? And so like I would say for sure just identity and figuring out who you are.
Yeah, I agree. I think with identity, again, like I kind of want to link that to where you're from, obviously, the United States, and how, in general, Western culture is, Western culture is one of the most impactful thing in this world right now. Identity have been an issue, not just for young people, but also adults, right? Like, do you think so?
Yeah. Oh, for sure. It's actually interesting that you bring that up because I had a conversation with Ian when we were in America. And I was talking about how okay, this is going to sound really kind of ridiculous, but I was like, I want these Lululemon pants. And the only reason I wanted them is because all of my friends back in America, they had them, right? And I'm happy with other pants. And it's not the point of the pants, but it's just the fact that like so much is, especially in the Western culture, right? So much of what we desire is because of what other people have or because other people want those things, right? And so it's hard to identify what you truly want and what you want from your heart, because there's so much outside societal surroundings like trying to curve your opinions and what you believe to be true, right? So yeah, it's totally a realistic issue in the Western culture, but I think everywhere.
Last episode, I actually also talked to someone who, so I'm doing this like whole episode about advice for millennials. So this is the third episode discussing about this. And the first one was about like just mental and emotional and spiritual. And then the second one is about racism and how that has been an issue in the States. And obviously this one is about just yourself and your identity. And I know that actually Miss Ellie was also and is still one of my mentors, and I really look up to her. So that's why we're talking now. And I just want to kind of ask you, what do you think are some advice that you could give to young people, millennials who are finding themselves about who you really are? Maybe sort of not really in a religious perspective, just in a general perspective.
Advice to millennials like as young adults, I think it is don't feel, I don't know, like I'm still young, right? And so like I'm speaking to my own self when I say to you and to everyone listening, slow down. And like again, I'm speaking to myself in this instance, like to not be so overwhelmed with what is so in front of you and what is so far from you, but to really take every day as a day. And to be okay if maybe that day didn't go well. Um, but to not think so far ahead and just really focus on the now. I think it's so easy to be so like goal driven, especially in our day and age when it's all about like graduating high school, going to college, going to get a successful job, and all of these different things. And that puts a lot of pressure on us young adults. But I think something I've learned is really to just, and my sister is actually going into university. She's the same age as you, Esther. And so something that I've just been really encouraging her to do is to just slow down and to enjoy the moment, because that moment's going to be gone in a split second. And you don't realize how much the moment means to you and how much that actually is shaping your life until it's past. And so that's kind of some advice that I've given her. And I think it's important for young people to hear, that not only do you have to slow down and be in the moment, but to also be wise in the decisions that you make, because that also maps out your future, right? So I don't know, that's probably really deep, but that's like legitimately what I've been talking to my sister about. And just to be like, hey, like she's all stressed about like going to college and like packing up and, and I'm just like, girl, like you are going to college. Like that's so exciting. Like step back and like enjoy the moment. Because yeah, you're not going to get that again. And so it's not about rushing through and getting through it all, but to really like slow down, and that's okay, right? Because that end goal will get there. Like you'll get to your goal.
You
I
gotta
don't know.
slow down. That's a good one. That's a good one to take
Yeah.
podcast. And just about like, slowing down and enjoying the moment. I also feel
Hmm.
like, because of quarantine, some people are like, what do we do now? And I think it's
Hmm.
a good opportunity for young people to start doing what they like to do, like
Hmm.
making arts and crafts and, music
Totally.
or anything like that. How do you think that we should kind of balance in between creating and still be ambitious, but knowing that it's okay to kind of slow down and just take a breath and like enjoy the moment?
Yeah. I think that's part of the journey. Like, I don't think there's an easy answer to that. I don't think that like you're going to just be able to slow down and enjoy the moment, but I think it takes time and it takes like practice. Like it literally does take practice, and a mindset change to be like, hey, I'm ambitious and I'm going to go for this, but that doesn't mean it all needs to be done today. And that doesn't mean I have to feel stressed about it constantly. Right. But I think that you can still be goal driven and goal oriented without feeling like you have to, um, break yourself, emotionally break yourself, physically break yourself, and all of the aspects there. Again, coming from my own self, like I'm very goal oriented, that, like I'm very motivated person, I get the job done and I work hard, and sometimes that mentally is draining and exhausting, but then that's when I have to like step back and be like, hey, it's okay, like tomorrow's a new day, and to just be done, right? But then to wake up that next morning and be like, hey, it's a new day, like let's get after it, right? But that's so much easier said than done, trust me.
I think being a goal oriented person sometimes leaves a lot of pressure on yourself. And it's like,
Yeah.
it's kind of like, could have done better, or like this could have been better, or, other
Yeah.
reasonings that you think is valid in the moment, but like sometimes it's really not.
Totally. Yeah. And then you're going to find out later down the road that everything you were stressed about in that moment, like, doesn't matter. Like, it, like, literally, like, oh, that was like 2 years ago. Remember that one time I was like so stressed? It doesn't even matter anymore. So,
Yeah, that's good. So another question I have following to the question before is that nowadays I feel like people are more self-aware of themselves in a way that like self-love is a thing,
mhm.
selfless is a thing, and I think that there's a really thin line between selfless and selfish, especially with the things that social media is promoting nowadays, about like loving
Yeah.
yourself and all of that. What do you think are what do you think are the difference between someone who's selfless, as in I'm taking care of myself, and just the difference between selfless and selfish, and how do we change our perspective in the right direction in a way?
Yeah. That's a hard question. I think, um, again, if I think about myself and someone who tries to make sure that I am the healthiest I can be physically, emotionally, all of it, but then to not be selfish, I guess what I would say is the difference would be my mindset is to make sure that I am the best I can be so that I can make others better. I can encourage others. I can help people in the ways that they need the support, but first I need to be okay. Right. And so I think that takes the selfishness away, because then it's not all about yourself, right? It's not all about, what makes me feel good or what I have, but it's making sure that I'm okay. And that's so important. But then doing it in a way that blesses others. Right. But I think that's tricky. And again, I think it takes practice, right? And it takes thinking through and, being intentional about, rather than it's not a quick fix, right? And I don't think that I'm perfect at it. I don't think anyone is. But I do think in order to practice that mindset, and stay away from that selfishness, it takes yourself you have to be okay first, right? And that's really important.
That's true. I agree. And about what you said about just taking care of yourself first and being okay internally before externally. How do you
Hmm.
think that social media, like Instagram or the trendy one now, TikTok, obviously,
Hmm.
has played a role in that kind of aspect that has influenced an individual's perspective and their life into seeing themselves?
I am all about social media. Like, I have Facebook, I have Instagram. I do not have TikTok. I have not jumped on that bandwagon yet. But I know about it, and obviously it's all over everywhere. So if you have one social media platform, you know what TikTok is, right? But I will be also the first to say social media is so dangerous when it comes to identity and the image it puts on individuals. I think that it is, like, even I go on and I see stuff and it's like, oh, like I want that, or I want to go here, or I wish I had her body, right? Like, honestly, those are the thoughts that go in my mind. So I think, again, it takes intentionality and, um, yeah, just being cautious with what you're filling your mind with and what you're seeing, and making sure that your mindset isn't going into it of like, I want to be this or I want that, but like, oh, that's really cool. Or, hey, you know what I mean? Like, identifying it differently. But definitely, I think it's a dangerous thing. I really do. And I think that it definitely impacts people's views and, as well as identity, like, for sure.
Thank you. And you used to be a PE teacher, and I know how fit you are. I mean, you ran every single day. Like, how can one be so motivated? What do you think are, you know, what do you think are, how does what we take in physically, obviously, like fried food, and just junk food in general, and how it like affects our body, and how do you think the things we take in mentally affects our mental health?
Oh, I think it's like totally a great comparison. Like, if you are allergic to dairy and you eat dairy, you're going to be sick, right? I think for mental health, in regards to what you see on the internet and social media, it's the same thing. Like, if you see things that are garbage, and that doesn't mean it has to be like inappropriate things, but just things that are not good for your mental health. Like, if you know that you struggle with body appearance, yet you're constantly watching TikToks of like undressed girls dancing and you see these like little bodies, right? Like, you're gonna obviously think negatively about yourself. So I definitely think that it's a good comparison. When you have bad food, you're going to feel sick. Well, when you see things that make you feel bad, you're going to mentally get down on yourself. And that can spiral really deep, right? That's depression, that's anxiety, that's self-hate, right? So you just have to be cautious and careful.
Totally agree. So, being cautious and careful, do you have like a personal experience that you would want to share?
For me, if I follow celebrities on Instagram and I see like everything they have, and they like are perfect and perfect in quotes, right? Like in every way, because they have all the money that in the world to make themselves perfect in quotes. But still, right? Like then I desire that, even though like I really don't. But like my sin, makes me want to desire those things. So I don't follow celebrities on Instagram. At least none that I like want, none that I
Yeah,
feel
I
like
get
I
it. Like none of the toxic ones. I totally agree with
toxic.
you. Yeah, toxic. So I
Yes.
totally agree with you with like the whole social media thing. Actually, I did this thing where I told myself and I actually encourage other people to do it. Sarah kind of like inspired me to do this whole like detox thing.
Yeah. Because I know other people who just did you do that recently?
I did it recently, but I've done it in the past just because it kind of helped me.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
It's really good because I feel like detoxing yourself from social media, it makes you more aware of like your surrounding. And it's like when you're
Yeah.
in a family table, sometimes you're like, okay, let me just Snapchat this and post this on the story. But like when you actually sit on the table, like you're missing out so many little moments that are like happening in between that you don't know because you're like always on your phone. Does that make sense?
Like, yeah, oh, for sure. And I guess another personal thing for me would be I delete, like for a while I was so engulfed in social media and like Instagram and Facebook and whatnot. I deleted them off my phone. I just took that temptation away, right? Um, and you're totally right. Like a what do you call it? Like a tech cleanse, or what did you call it?
Detox.
There you go. A detox, right? Cleanse, detox, like same thing, right? But I think that is so important, and that's a great way to kind of clear that toxicity out of your life.
Yeah, I agree. And then, like, I think that, it's so interesting to me because back in the days where technology wasn't as developed as now, like, people would go on social media, like MySpace or something, like something that's very old, but they would do it as a form of like escape. So it's like, I'm in reality and then I'm gonna go escape. But it's so
Mhm.
funny because it's like now reality is a form of escape from social media, which is totally the opposite of what's supposed to be happening.
Totally. But I think that's good though. Like I think it's good that people have started to identify that, right? Like I think more and more people have realized that social media is more harmful than good, right? But yeah, it's so interesting how that has turned.
Before we kind of just close the podcast and I kind of ask you for just a general advice, I want to know some of your quarantine playlists and what you've been listening to kind of spice up the home party.
Okay, so that's really funny you asked me that because believe it or not, okay, you're gonna like hate me for this. I am not a music person at all. And so when I go for a run, I usually just like throw on like a random Spotify playlist and I couldn't even tell you what it is. I am not a good person to ask.
I'm going to send you my workout Spotify playlist. I just ran
Okay,
with it just
maybe
now.
now I will say I am not a Taylor Swift fan, but I do really like her new album.
It's okay. There's no much of a Taylor Swift in the podcast. It's just working out music.
Okay, but you asked like my playlist that I have. I'll say I like her new album. I have been listening to that quite often.
That's nice. Welcome to the family.
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah, it's kind of I would rather work in silence and I would rather drive in silence, which sounds ridiculous. And so I'm not a music person, and that is not a millennial thing at all because most millennials are like AirPods and Spotify premium like all day every day.
I think that's something
So
unique though. Like it's something that's unique about you because sometimes when you listen to music and you drive or like on a walk, it's kind of like you're not necessarily thinking at the moment or like just contemplating about things. But when you're in like a quiet walk, that's when like, the deep things starts hitting.
yeah, I guess so. And I think you're right. Like just so this is gonna sound really ridiculous, but I listened to a podcast one time. I don't ask me what it is because I don't actually know. But it was talking about the importance of not listening to music when you're exercising so that you can hear yourself breathe. And it was like talking about being intentional about your breathing. So then I was like, oh, this is weird. But then that day when I went on my workout, I like was intentional about listening to myself breathe. And it was like so mentally cleansing. It was the craziest thing ever. But you're right. Like there's something like cool that comes out of like just being in your own person, right? And like I don't know. But music is really cool too and there's a lot of awesome lyrics that are also like, "Oh, yeah, that's totally my life," right?
But that's so crazy. But like, how do you? Because when you work out, you kind of don't really want to feel the moment because it's like it's hurting and like, it's really tiring. So you put on music to distract you. So how does that work? Like, you just enjoy hearing yourself breathe? That's so weird.
Really weird, but it's true. Like it's about hearing yourself breathe and like what your body is doing, which is so crazy when you think about the fact like when you actually think about what it's doing to take a breath and like to take a deep breath in and then to let it out. And then so it was that, but then it was also talking about like really noticing things around you, like the birds singing and like an airplane flying in the sky. It sounds so dorky, but it was actually like so like meditating and like so interesting to like come to be one with the earth, you know?
Wow, I think you're aging quite fast too, Miss Ellie.
I know. I'm amazing. I'm aging quite fast. It's kind of ridiculous. I go to bed at like 8.
Really? That is so early.
I'm up at like 5. I don't know. I'm old.
Oh wow, that's early. 5 a.m.
It's a work life.
So do you just like run at 5 a.m. or do you like wake up and then you do your
No.
routine? Oh, how do you?
Well, I usually would run kind of I see I'm a very like motivated person, so I can some people are like if I don't do it in the morning, I'm not going to get it done. For me, it's like I just got to get it done sometime in the day. So it changes every day when I get it done. Now that work has started and I'm teaching again, I go straight to the gym after work. And then that's it. I go straight to the gym and then I come home. But I definitely don't go in the morning. I'm not a morning person.
Okay, that's more relatable than just running at 5 a.m. in the morning. Like nobody does that.
Nobody does that. When I start doing that, Esther, then you'll know that I'm getting really old.
Yeah, that's crazy, dude. Like honestly, I remember last year when traveling was a thing.
Yeah.
I was in Australia, and then at 7 a.m. we were just like driving around the neighborhood, and I see these like moms sprinting at like 7 a.m. They were sprinting and sweating. I was like, "What are you doing at 7 a.m.?"
Oh, yeah. No, that's not me.
But you sweat a lot when you run.
For sure. Like it's well, and also when you're in Indonesia, like it's you sweat when you walk, let's be
It's
honest.
true.
So it doesn't really take that much to start sweating. So I don't know.
It was really nice talking to you, but before we close the podcast, I want to ask one last question, which is, what's one quote do you live by, and how would you explain that to us? How it has changes your life?
My quote that I live by is what you think is how you're gonna feel. And so basically, what that means to me is the way I think and the things I fill my mind with in regards to what I think. So if I think negatively towards a situation, I'm going to feel negatively towards a situation. So if I change my mindset and I have a better attitude about it, I'm going to have a better perspective on it.
It's
Yep.
all about perspectives, people.
That's right. Perspective.
Well, thank you, Miss Ellie, for joining me for this podcast today. I'm going to link all her social media down below, maybe just Instagram. Well, she's married, so boys, none of the DMs.
Sorry.
You can definitely ask her for advice. So see you guys in the next podcast.